The first point of education that we will review is freedom of movement and contact on screens. The highlighted offensive player, Nick Richards, does not give the moving defender, Aaron Neesmith, an opportunity to avoid the contact, and an offensive foul for an illegal screen was correctly called. To be considered legal, the screener must get directly into his opponent's path and give him the opportunity to avoid contact. This is another example of an offensive foul for an illegal screen. The offensive player setting the screen, Lauri Markkanen, extends his legs outside the vertical plane of his body, and he makes illegal contact with the moving defender, Lugens Dort. Remember, a screener must have his legs no wider than shoulder width apart, and he may not extend his legs outside the vertical plane of his body when setting a screen. Another example of an illegal screen can be seen here. The highlighted offensive player, Obi Toppin, moves to set a screen, but he then extends both arms and he pushes the on-ball defender, Josh Okogie. This illegal contact by Toppin clearly affects Okogie's ability to play defense, and the offensive foul was called correctly. Now, let's look at some examples of defensive players affecting offensive players' freedom of movement on the perimeter. The highlighted on-ball defender, Anthony Edwards, initiates illegal contact with the dribbler, Tyus Jones, that affects Jones' rhythm and balance as he starts to drive toward the basket. This is a defensive foul on Edwards. On-ball defenders cannot affect an opponent's speed, quickness, balance, or rhythm. The freedom of movement guidelines on the perimeter also include illegal contact initiated by offensive players as well. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Josh Richardson, grabs and holds the left arm of his defender, Franz Wagner, as Richardson cuts towards the basket. This is clearly illegal contact by Richardson, and the offensive foul was correctly called by the lead official. Next, we will look at another example of illegal contact initiated by an offensive player on the perimeter. The highlighted offensive player, OG Anunoby, pushes his legal defender, Jordan Poole, in an attempt to get open. This contact initiated by Anunoby is more than marginal, and an offensive foul was correctly called. As we know, the freedom of movement guidelines extend from the perimeter into the post area. Here, we will see the highlighted defensive player, Russell Westbrook, use his right leg to dislodge the offensive player, Devin Booker, from his legally obtained position. The replays clearly show the illegal contact, as Westbrook's right leg is lifted off the floor and Booker is dislodged. Next, we will look at an example of illegal contact initiated by an offensive player in the post. The highlighted offensive post player, Jonas Valanciunas, uses his left arm to initiate illegal contact as he hooks the left arm of his defender, Rudy Gobert, as he curls into the paint. The offensive foul was correctly called by the slot official, who had an open look at the illegal contact by Valanciunas. The final play in this section is another example of illegal contact initiated by an offensive player in the post. The highlighted offensive post player, Alperen Şengün, uses his left arm to initiate illegal contact as he hooks his legal defender, Bojan Bogdanovic. This is illegal contact by Şengün, and the offensive foul was correctly called. The next point of education to review is traveling, and this first play will show an example of a traveling violation on the perimeter. The offensive player, Peyton Pritchard, establishes his left foot as his pivot foot, but he then lifts that left foot prior to releasing the ball on the dribble. A traveling violation was correctly called on this play. Our next example in the traveling section shows a violation that occurs after the offensive player has gathered the ball. The offensive player, Dorian Finney-Smith, drives toward the basket, but after he gathers the ball, he takes more than the allowed 2 steps before releasing the ball on the field goal attempt. The replay clearly shows Finney-Smith gathering the ball with his right foot on the floor, and he then steps with his left, then his right, and finally with his left foot again for an illegal 3rd step. A traveling violation was needed on this play. On this next play, the highlighted offensive player, Gary Trent Jr., will commit a traveling violation on his drive to the basket. Trent will end his dribble and gather the ball with his right foot on the floor. He then jumps off of and lands on that same right foot. This is a traveling violation, as a player may not step with the same foot consecutively after gathering the ball. Our final example in the traveling section shows a violation that occurs in the post. The offensive player, Andre Drummond, establishes his left foot as his pivot foot, but as he spins toward the baseline, he then lifts that left foot prior to releasing the ball on the dribble. A traveling violation was correctly called by the slot official.